So tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name's Jin Han. I'm a concept artist and illustrator working in the toy industry. Uh, Also working on animation and games and done some comics in the past. And so I've touched a little bit of everything throughout my career. Hopped around to quite a few companies. I'm definitely not the lifer type. Whether by force or just my own decision, I've hopped around to different companies because new opportunities, popped up. And so, uh, yeah, here I am, 20 years later, talking
I
to
mean,
you.
this is a great conversation because I think a lot of people out there who collect toys, especially, and we all know, like, I'm a comics guy, I'm a toys guy, I'm in everything collectible and nostalgia, and toys go a long way with that. So, can we talk about a little bit how you got in the business?
Yeah, I took a really weird route. Out of high school, I didn't go directly to college. I was kind of an interesting kid. So, very typical first generation parents who immigrated here. Um, all about you become a doctor or a lawyer, and that was my path for the first 7, 8 years of school, right? And eventually, I just got burned out, right? And in high school, I rebelled, and freshman year, I was on track to graduate a year early. By sophomore
Oh, wow.
year, I was my counselor told me you're not going to graduate at this rate. It was that big a swing in my grades and just my personality, rebelling, and all that. So at that point, the colleges that my parents wanted, right? The Ivy Leagues and the UCs, they're already out. They're gone. My SATs were a mess. Um, so, I bounced around various community colleges because I knew by the time I was a freshman that I wanted to do comics, right? So I grew up in the era of, John Byrne, Mignola, Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, that whole, 80s and early 90s era where the boom happened, right? Like
Hmm.
the golden years for me in terms of
Yeah.
comics.
I think a lot of
Um,
kids who grew up in that area, including myself, that was like the pinnacle until we had that crash.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing was because of how popular the image founders got at Marvel, they caused that boom and the crash. Right? I
Yep.
mean, that's when all those
Exactly.
variant covers came out and all that.
Hmm.
But yeah, so through those guys, I started studying, the Kirby's and Neil Adams and Romita, all the legends. But yeah, so I graduated high school, did really odd jobs. I worked at a video store, worked at shopping mall kiosks, engraving license plate frames, um, did retail clothing. I bounced around a lot. And it wasn't until I was maybe 25 where, through that time, I was still taking classes, figure drawing, life drawing classes, design classes, just trying to find instructors who would actually teach me because I'm not trying to, pump myself up here, but I was better than average because I would just practice all throughout high school. That's all I would do. I wouldn't study. I wouldn't do anything else. I would just draw. And I knew that I was better than average, but I knew I was way far behind the level of becoming a pro. So I was waiting for instructors to actually critique me and give me feedback. I didn't even care if it was, tossing my thing in the garbage because that's what art center teachers used to do back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And every single time I go to class, I would ask questions, but the instructors would say, "Oh no, you're doing fine. You're doing fine," and they just move on to the other students who needed the help. And so, I'd go a semester there, and I think, I'd ask questions, and they'd say, "No, you're okay. You're," and it was really, it wasn't very constructive for me, right? Because I didn't feel myself improving. I just felt like I was stagnant. Finally, at 24 or so, there was this one life drawing instructor who really did a lot more than the others. He would tell me to stay after class, and he would, show me 2, 3 hours after class, just teaching me technique, showing me what I was doing right and wrong, and even he might invite me over to his house to, have drawing sessions and all that. So that's when I, made the move, applied to Otis College, got in there, started taking the the toy design program, and I was in there for about 2 years, and there were these two instructors that were teaching entertainment design. And ultimately, I loved toys as a kid. I always wanted to kind of follow in Todd's footsteps, where he went from comic book artist to toy company to everything, right?
Mhm.
And and so I knew I wanted to do entertainment and toys together. The two instructors that I was going to take the following year wound up resigning from Otis, and they became department chairs at Art Center College over in Pasadena. And so, for those that don't know, Art Center is considered one of the top art and design colleges in the nation. And so, it was always my dream to go there, but I got rejected a couple of times. Um, then finally, once they left, my skill level improved, and I applied to Art Center and I got in. So the third time's a charm there. Uh, and then as I was working Art Center, it was crazy, man. Like when I talk about timing, I know that my parents and just most people would probably look at me and think that I'm wishy-washy and I quit things easily, but it's about opportunity, right?
Hmm.
I was in a year and a half in at Art Center, and then there was a job posting on the spawn.com website saying we're looking for sculptors. And when I was at Otis, I took some sculpting classes. That was pretty good. If you understand how to turn a form in 2D in a drawing, then when it comes to actually translating that into a 3D form, you're capable of doing it as long as you understand how the tools work, right?
Hmm.
So I applied at McFarlane Toys as a sculptor, and I got the job. And so I had to make a decision. The whole reason I started going to school was so I could work with Todd one day. No joke, that was the only reason I was going into the toy program and entertainment. I was going to work with McFarlane and Jim Lee. One of those two, I don't care who. Got a job at McFarlane. So, the debate in my head was, okay, spend another 40, 50 grand in tuition or just go start making money. And so I chose the decision to make money. Um, yeah, so that's how my career got started as a McFarlane toy sculptor.
So let me ask you a question. One, was it hard kind of leaving school? I know how you feel with having kind of overbearing parents at times. I can be an overbearing parent to my kids, and I have a kid going into his senior year, so I kind of understand. My dad was a little overbearing as well, but finally, leaving the art school, was it a really hard decision? And did you struggle with it after you took the job at McFarland, or were you just like, I'm ready to go and that's it?
You know, the decision to leave Art Center was really easy. No struggle at all because essentially, look, not many people can say that their dream come true job, right? Their dream job is right there in front of them, and I didn't hesitate. My parents were upset because for them it was you went to Otis for 2 years, quit that, finally got into Art
Yeah.
Center, you're quitting this. And I had to try to explain to them, look, remember all those Comic Cons that I went to as a kid, spending money. And so it was actually Otis that was a harder decision because that was really kind of risky, right? Because I had already
Yeah.
completed 2 years at Otis. Do I need to get the degree? In our field, actually, you don't need a degree. As long as you're a great artist, great designer, and you understand production and all that, and you have the experience, you can stay employed for a very long time, right? So that was a harder decision, but yeah.
I hate to ask this question, but it's me, so I'm going to ask the question anyway. But like going from school to being that hired as a sculptor through McFarland, was it like like a decent salary, or was it like first job out of the gate, and they're just like, I'm barely surviving here type of thing?
Okay, so I'm a parent, you're a parent. The thing we always
Yeah,
worry about our kids is if you're going to get into an industry like this, are you going to make money? Because the starving artist stereotype comes into play, right?
yeah.
I will say this. Um, as long as this was what, 2000, I was 25, no, 27. So, early 2000s, right? 2003, 4. At that point, I don't remember exactly, but my salary was, God, I want to say it was 45 to 50,000 at that point. And the thing that was great about McFarlane at that time was we're talking peak. This was when movie maniacs and Spawn figures were going crazy, still $10. Business was booming. And they were just doing tons of crazy stuff. The Dragons line first came out, when I was there. And
Mhm.
so the sculptors, we'd be working overtime, and the overtime was unlimited. So you get your base pay, but then you also get time and a half. And then some people even did double time because that was just that much work. So I knew sculptors at that time. I don't know numbers, but there must have been guys I don't know, clearing at least 70, 75, 80K back in early 2000s, right?
All right, that's not
Um,
bad. Right out of school.
And
I mean, right out of, not even out of school, but leaving school to go do something else.
right. And to be honest, man, like if you're if you're a student today, 2025, trying to get into a toy company or game company, um, man, I'm seeing entry level junior designer positions for a toy company, for example, like Mattel Hasbro. You should be able to get minimum 40 to 50 starting base pay
Yeah.
as a junior level designer. And that might be even lower because
Yeah.
I haven't really checked in on it, but this was at least pre-COVID. They can still get that much. So for all you parents out there who worry about kids who say, "I want to draw toys and make games," there's a path where after, let's say, they work 7, 8 years, they could be clearing six figures as long as they understand how design works on the production level. They understand the market, right? And they're just not sitting
Mhm.
there saying, "No, I just want to draw cool stuff." Because there are artists who do
Mhm.
that in the industry, and they tend to, fall a little bit further behind on the pay scale, just because they want to stay as a creative. It's when you start getting to like the more manager, director, marketing, um, more roles where you can start making more money.
Back to like the art part of this, because all right, so you're working at McFarlane, you're sculpting. What could you tell us at that time what you were sculpting? Anything cool that we would know?
All right, so I was still new, right? So there's a hierarchy, and of course there is, right? There were guys over there. I'm telling you, uh, at that time we must have had maybe 6 or 7 sculptors in the studio, and it might have been more, but I think that's the right number. And these guys were doing it was artwork because McFarlane Toys, they sculpt two up, right? So what two up means is if a figure is a 6-inch figure, then double that. And at 200% they sculpt it so they get all the detail. They'll send that over to their factory, and the factory will shrink it down so that they can cut steel tooling for it, but it still retains a lot of that detail. And so
Oh
I'm
wow.
seeing dragons figures, Spawn, Commando Spawn. I mean, Spawn with the capes, and you're talking if a regular figure is a 6-inch, I'm seeing them at double that size, and they're works of art.
Yeah.
It was amazing stuff.
Do you ever get to take like one of the prototypes? You ever? I don't want to get you in trouble, but you ever like able to like snag one and be like, oh, I got the original sculpt.
No, you know what? I don't know how it worked because I was such a newbie. I was too scared to ask if I could take anything home. And to be
Yeah.
honest, I didn't work on anything crazy. I think as far as sculpting goes, I did various parts, not even full figures for NBA, the NBA sports picks.
Yeah.
So I did, arms and legs and shoes and all that. They wouldn't let me touch portraits, which totally understand because at that point, McFarlane was dead on portraits, right, for likeness. Um, what else I do? I did one thing I do have when they were doing those album covers. I don't know if you remember that, like the 3D album covers. There was a Guns N' Roses that we were working on, and I have one of the skulls that I did.
All
Uh,
right.
but that's the only thing. The prototype stayed with the the head of the design center over there.
Yeah. I could imagine.
But you know
All
what? I
right.
have heard. I had a guy reach out to me years ago, and he said that, "Oh yeah, one of my friends has a resin casting of a two up for a Raven Spawn figure." I was like, "You
Oh
want to buy
wow.
it?" It's like, "Yeah, how much?" And the price was just ridiculous at the time.
I
Um,
see. Like that's why I asked the question, because I know like some of the stuff, especially like the original sculpts, they go for crazy amounts of money.
Even though I was sculpting, and it was great, right? I learned a new skill, a new craft with the best of the best. And even through that, I just couldn't convince myself to do this for an extended period of time because when I had been there, it might have been like 8 or 9 months by this point, and I made sure I let my boss know, hey, look, I love being a sculptor, but at some point I would love to start designing for McFarlane figures, right? And I said, anytime there's an opportunity, please let me know. And I kept bugging him about it over months, right? And it reached a head where I thought I'm doing so much sculpting because it was a lot of overtime and a lot of work that I just knew that if I just stuck with this, I might just become a sculptor, which isn't a bad thing, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do
Yeah.
um, long term. And I let him know, hey, look, I think I might have to look for something else if you aren't able to give me a design job. It wasn't a threat. It was just, I don't want to leave, right? I want to stay here. But if there's nothing for me to design as a concept artist, I'm starting to have some thoughts about maybe trying something else. And I was lucky enough. That was when the Dragon Series 1 had already come out. It was a huge hit. And they were about to start Series 2. And he said, okay, tell you what, why don't you design a few dragons for us for this new series? And I said, hell yeah. So my day job was, he said, you can't design while you're at work though. Or you need to find time to do it on your own. And so I'd be sculpting, 9 to 5. And as soon as I went home to my little apartment that was a 4-minute walk from the studio, I'd just be sitting down at my desk, just drawing dragons, right? And so went from sculpting to designing some dragons. And for was it series 2 or 3? I don't remember, but they wound up using quite a bit. And I think there was one point where the entire series, they had selected my designs to sculpt out. And, they made changes and all that in the final. But, if you see these 2 dragons here, those 2 back there were part of it, of that series. And so that was really cool. Yeah.
So you got what you wanted, right? Did they eventually
Yeah.
move you into just design, or you stuck doing the sculpting for a little bit?
God, it was so long ago. I don't know exactly what happened, but um, I was doing designs, but I was still doing sculpting, and so I was a full-time sculptor and a very part-time designer, and you know, you get a taste of it, right? And drawing these cool dragons, but then I'm going to sculpt the next morning, and I must have asked again, is there any more design work I can do? I'll do anything. I'll do graphics. I'll help out with the packaging department. I'll do anything to help me just design more and move away from sculpting. And they were really cool about, what I was looking for. They understood. They were trying their best to accommodate, but they said, you know what? Just being completely honest with you, Jen, we need you as a sculptor. That's just where we are. We understand if that's not going to work out for you. And I think it was probably me that let him know that, okay, well, then I think I might have to, part ways, but would you still want to work with me as a freelancer? And say, oh yeah, we can definitely work something out there. And so I made the move back to California and started doing freelance work. And so that was when the design work for McFarlane just flooded in. They kept me busy for a long time. It was everything from like Spawn figures, dragons, and just about anything else that they had. That either Todd or some of the in-house sculptors who did like to design, if they couldn't get to it, then they tossed it over to me. And so I was doing that for a good year and a half or two. And so so this is the crazy story, right? How I wound up going back to McFarlane Toys. So working as a freelancer for them, I had a few odd jobs here and there for other toy companies like Mattel. And one of my buddies from the New Jersey Design Center, McFarlane, he says, this is back in 06, 07, so it might have been 07. And he calls me up and he says, hey, Jen, I'm going to be at Comic-Con this year. It's my first time going. Why don't you come on down and hang out? And this was Comic-Con 07, 06, 07, before the Marvel boom, right? This was on
Well, 07 is right when Iron Man came out. So I don't know if it was
yeah.
pre-Iron Man or right after Iron Man. Do you remember?
This is pre-Iron Man, so it must have been 06.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So now check this out. Up until 2006, I could drive down to San Diego on a Thursday or a Friday at 10, 11 o'clock, right? And I can still get parking underground beneath the convention center for the regular fee. And I can still go upstairs, get my badge, and be in the convention hall all within 30, 40 minutes. So that was the last Comic-Con I remember being normal, right? What it used to be. So anyway, I told my friend, yeah, sure, I'll meet you. And, I drive down there the day that he gets in. And so we're walking the floor, and I'm intentionally avoiding the McFarlane booth because I felt weird. I felt like I'd be that guy going to the booth
Yeah.
and kind of nerding out over the stuff we did. And I was like, I don't know. He kept saying, let's go see it. Kept pushing it off. And finally, after, a couple times asking, I said, all right, let's just go. Like, I just want to be in and out, right? Just say hi to a few people. I don't know why I was so against it. So we get to the booth and we're just hanging out, looking at the new prototypes and the 2-ups and stuff they've got there. And somehow I happened upon the counter where the employees are working the booth. And this older gentleman in glasses is working the booth. And he, for whatever reason, he looks down at my badge and he catches my name. And he goes, wait, hold on. Excuse me. Jin Han? Are you the guy that's been doing our concepts for the figures? I was like, what the hell is that? Yeah, that's me. How'd you know? Turns out his name's Larry Martyr. So Larry was a long-time McFarlane Toys guy. Been in the comic industry for a ton of years too. I mean, this guy is a true pro vet, and I guess somehow, some way, he told me, look, Todd really loves your work on the toy stuff that you're doing. He actually wants to talk to you. It's like, what? Like, I was just weird because they have my email, never got an email before this. So it was just crazy timing, right? That they must have been talking about me at some point.
I got a question. So before we get to this point, were you hands-on with Todd at all or no?
No.
Okay.
So in the Jersey office, Todd he's a god, right?
He's a god everywhere, not just in Jersey.
Yeah, but even working in the company, when he would come through, because it wouldn't be often, but when he would come through, it's like, oh, Todd's here, right? And nobody wants to be that guy and ask for an autograph. So it's really like he's in, he works, he's out, right? That's it. And so, yeah, it was really weird. It was kind of cool.
So what happened?
All right, so Larry tells me to just hang out. He's gonna go get Todd. And at that point, I'm shaking, right? Because we're talking, I'd worked with the company, but never worked directly with Todd in any capacity. No email CCs, no phone call, nothing. So the fact that he even knew it was me that was doing the concepts was a shock, right? Because the guy that ran the Jersey office, his name's Ed Frank. And so Ed ran the show over there. And so, Ed was the boss of that whole group. So, here I am, finally, after 20 some odd years of life, I finally get to meet Todd. Because I don't know what it was, but when I was younger going to Comic-Con, I never even stood in line for his autograph because for whatever reason, I couldn't find his table. Like I found Jim's and Mark and Will's, I found their tables, but Todd, I couldn't find where he was. I don't know if he didn't have one or I wasn't looking hard enough. So it was my first time seeing this guy in person, and walks out of the booth where the employees usually are, and he says, "Jin, how you doing, bud?" And he says, "Yeah, let's go talk." And I thought I'd be going into the booth, right? Somewhere quiet and private. I was like, no, let's go outside. So we walk out of the convention hall, and so it's still the area of the convention, but it's right before you walk into the hall, right?
Okay.
And so here I am. Just picture this: 20-something-year-old kid inside, totally freaking out, standing outside the convention center, talking to Todd McFarlane, and the people walking by are like, they see it's Todd McFarlane.
Yeah.
So people are just like, what the heck? Like, what's going on over there? Why is Todd McFarlane out here, right? Who's that schlub he's talking to? And I'm just, I just say, yeah, Todd, yeah, it's great meeting you. Let me know what I can do. And so I thought he was just going to ask, hey, could you work on a few more designs for this other line, or have something brewing? I want you to, talk to you about it. But no, he says, hey, look, I want to offer you a position at my Tempe, Arizona headquarters. I'm floored. He's like, are you serious? Yes, I'll take it. And he chuckles and he says, no. Like, I want you to go out there because you need experience. Like, Todd, no. Like, I've been wanting to work with you. I went to school to work with you. Yes. That's a yes. I says, no, look, it's Arizona. You need to see what the summer's like. I want you to come out, feel the weather, because a lot of people, have a hard time adjusting to Arizona heat. And then we'll talk, right? And so we set it up for me to go out there. and I'm out in Arizona within a couple of weeks, and then yeah, that's how things got started on my second leg of my career with McFarlane.
So you're at McFarlane, you're in Arizona. What happens? How long did you do that for, and what was the next move?
All right, so again, dream come true job, and then Todd just on a random before end of day comes to me with another one that just knocks my ass down. So I'm working on something. I don't know what it was. So there at my Cintiq, and then Todd comes into my little cubicle. He says, "Hey, Jen, hey bud, can you do digital coloring?" I was like, "Yeah." So you have to understand before I go on there. Photoshop for me, when I would look at all the concept artists that I wanted to emulate, Photoshop was really tough for me to grasp early on. I don't know why. There was this block, this mental block where I didn't understand how to utilize the layers properly. I didn't understand how to use the brushes properly. And so it was really a struggle for me to understand how I could even, even when it comes to something like comic book coloring, where it's different than concept art design. You have similar techniques that overlap, but even for something where it's a little bit more manageable and structured, like comic book coloring, I just couldn't get it, right? And the thing with me, throughout my entire life, I always function best when I'm tossed into the lion's den, right? I work well under pressure, and sometimes I need it to kind of kick my ass into just figure this out, right? Instead of overthinking it. So he says, "Hey, can you do digital coloring?" I said, "Yeah." I was like, "Hey, tell you what, I want you to color up this Spawn pinup," because at that time Will Spartasio had taken over on the book, and so it was going to be the first promo image that was going to feature his work. And so he said, "Can you do it?" In my head, I'm thinking, "Holy shit, I don't know how to do it." But I told him, "Yes, I'll do it. Give it to me." And so I got the digital file, and I did a really quick refresh because at that point I wasn't doing much digital work at in the Arizona office. Everything was just traditional pen and ink with marker. Maybe I'll do some Photoshop sketching, right? But no rendering of any kind. So he says, "I need this by tomorrow morning." And it was already 4 or 5 o'clock. I was thinking, shit, how am I going to do this? I watched a couple of YouTube tutorials. At that time, there weren't that many, not like there are today.
Yeah. Now you can find anything on YouTube.
Yeah. And back then you can find them, but it was a bit more digging that you needed to do. And watching a few tutorials, I thought, that's not helping at all. I still couldn't understand it. And at that point, it was already 6, 7, 8 o'clock. I thought, fuck, I can't stay out, this late just researching. I've just got to do it. So I did it, calmed my nerves, and said, all right, look, layers, they function in a very simple way. One on top of the other. That's it.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I started grinding on it. I probably have that image. Might have it somewhere, but yeah, started grinding away on it. And eventually, it worked, right? It wasn't beautiful. I'm not getting like Alex Sinclair level renders here, but it worked, and Todd liked it enough that he said, "Okay, let's go, get it to print." Right. And that was my first step into the comic side of the business, and yeah, it just rolled from there. Yeah.
And then did you keep doing it, or was that like the one and only time?
So I thought that was it. I thought it was one and done. Thought it was so cool. I got to, render Will Spartasio, who was another, comic legend that I collected as a kid. And I don't know what happened from then until this next moment, but Todd said, "Hey, you want to try coloring the Spawn book?" Like,
Wow.
it was pretty awesome.
Well, let me stop you. Let me stop you right there, because that's just incredible to me that one, you've had all these experience with the Todd, and you've on a, I don't want to say a lower level experience with sculpting, and then going into Arizona and doing what you did there, and then he keeps offering more and more and more. I mean, for me, my confidence would have been sky high at that point. Number one, working with the guy who you've idolized growing up, but also like, you know what, he trusts you enough to keep going and moving up the ladder to take other pieces. So to me, I would have been like, holy shit, this guy's starting to trust me.
So after I'd colored up Wils's pinup, then he asked me, at the time, Brian Heberlin was still on the book. And so he said, hey, could you color up a few pages of the interior on Brian's work? And so he wanted to go for a certain style because it was like a dream sequence or something like that in the story, and he wanted to do this desaturated color look. And so I said, yeah, it was maybe 4 or 5 pages, something like that, in like an early, like in the 170s or early 180s, around that range. And so I did that. And then he asked me, hey, could you maybe touch up some of the inks? I want to, he gave me direction. So this is where at the time, I didn't know what was taboo in the comic industry, right? I didn't know how much you were or weren't supposed to touch another artist's work. All I knew was Todd McFarlane, my boss, the guy that signs my paycheck, is telling me he wants these edits made. So after I did the coloring, there were a couple of inking edits that Todd wanted to make. And so, I did a little bit of inks. I mean, nothing major, just little things where he, like in Todd fashion, he wanted to add more detail, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Brian must have been busy on finishing up the next book. And so Todd might have been trying to see how I can fit into that pipeline. So I did that. He must have liked it enough, because then that's when he offered me the full-time color role on Spawn. So he said, you'll take over colors as soon as Will starts his run, which was 185. And, must have liked it enough where I stayed on the book up until I was let go from the company.
If you'd like to become a sponsor here on the Mighty Rewind podcast, make sure you reach out at the Mighty Rewind podcast at gmail.com.